Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 79 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show.
You did great. Let me tell you why I suck at jujitsu.
So if you followed the last few weeks, I have not been having a lot of guests on. I've been doing more solo episodes. Really, I'm just doing those because we are still in the middle of building out our a new recording studio. We were built out all of the stuff to film jiu-jitsu content, but we also are going to have it double as a podcast recording studio. And so that should be really cool, but we will not be able to start to do that until we get it done. And so actually next week will be the first time that we record a podcast in the studio. This was recorded like 4 weeks ago before the studio was ready. The quality of video is not what it will be when we switch it over, but it still worked out. And so it's still, I finished editing it today. It's still really good. But this kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk to you guys about. The reason that I filmed that 4 weeks ago and never released it is because it is an episode with my student Eric. Eric Keebner has been on the show before. Got a lot of good feedback the last time he was on, and we decided we were going to do another one. Well, it just so happened that I knew 4 weeks after we recorded he was going to get his black belt. And so, during the interview, he's still a brown belt, but it's kind of a celebratory thing. I think you guys will really enjoy that because I'm going to put his really short and sweet black belt speech at the end of it and tie it all together. And I also had the honor of promoting a second black belt. It's my student Derek, and the cool thing about that is Derek and I we started training together when I started training. He was one of the first. He was my coach's first blue belt and my coach's first purple belt, and he was always. He had more. He had trained longer than me. He had trained for like 4 years, doing no gi, and then kind of transitioning into the gi when I started jujitsu 13 years ago. And so he ended up moving away, was a brown belt for a while, and moved back to St. Louis. And I had the honor of getting to promote him. And so it was really cool. It was a really cool experience. But something I was telling my students that day was I want to make sure that you guys understand that I think we always use the term journey with black belt. Oh, black belt's a journey. Black belt's a journey, and it's. I don't think it's a stupid thing to use. I think it makes sense, but I also think there's a little bit of a danger in thinking of black belt as a journey. And what I mean by that is when you think of things as a journey, you think, okay, I'm trying to get to the end point. That is my goal. I just want to be there at the end. My opinion on this is that shouldn't be your goal. You shouldn't be trying to focus on getting a black belt. To be totally honest, you could just order a black belt on Amazon. Most people wouldn't even know the difference that follow you on Facebook, right? Most people wouldn't know the difference. So why don't you just do that if that's your goal, is to get a black belt? Well, your goal isn't to get a black belt. I think restructuring the way you verbalize that will make a really big difference on how you approach it. Your goal is to be a black belt. It is not to get a black belt. And so that's why I don't like to call it a journey. I really think that we should call it a transformation. I've known Eric and Derek, both guys that got promoted. Derek for 13 years, Eric for 9 or 10, and the people that they were 13 years ago and 9 years ago were completely different people. They had to do so much to become a black belt, not to get a black belt, not to receive it. And so, what I mean by that, and I'll give you guys some different analogies on how to look at training, but I think just a really straightforward way of saying it is a lot of times we see a black belt and maybe they own a really successful school, and we think, I can't wait until I get to own a successful school. And it's okay to dream like that. And it's good to dream like that. But that shouldn't be the end of your thought. You should also say, if that is my goal, if that is what I want to do right now, even as a white belt or a blue belt or purple belt, I could be asking myself, what do I have to do now to be a school owner, to become a school owner, to transform into one? And so, what I mean by that is you just don't get your black belt one day and say, okay, now I'm going to figure out how to become a school owner. I don't think that that is a good. That is a good idea. You know, you find mentors, you find people. Something I've talked about on the show is how much I admire Chewie. I've talked about that a few different times on the show, and he's somebody I have a lot of conversations with. I've done a lot of like of his business classes, and somebody I admire. I don't ever sit at home and say, "Man, can't wait. One day I'm just going to be like Chewie. Nothing's going to change, but I'm just going to one day appear. I'm going to have a beard, and I'm going to be, successful on YouTube." That's not what I do. What I do is I say, okay, what does he do really well? How do I become that? How do I become a really good communicator? That's really the thing that I admire about him is his ability to communicate with people, and then also just the way that he carries himself. So I ask myself, how do I become a better communicator? Something that I did was I asked him. I said, "Hey, man, how do you communicate so well?" If you guys listen to one of the earliest episodes on my podcast, maybe like 13 or 14, I have him on the show and I ask him that. How do you communicate so well? How do you get to that point? And that is how you become something, is you start to look at who is doing it, what are they doing, and then what steps could I take right now, today, to get there? If you're a white belt and you hope to be a school owner one day, that doesn't mean you need to know everything yet. You don't put pressure on yourself, but pick up a business book, ask a school owner and say, "Hey, is there any tip that you could give me that would be good for me to be able to run a school?" And maybe all your answer you're going to get is, "Well, just keep training, just keep focusing on it," and that's fine. But I like to be more intentional. I think it's really good to be more intentional. And so, kind of like my analogy that I thought of while I was just talking there is, I don't know if I really don't know the age demographic of who listens to this. I think it's really broad and it seems to kind of it'd be everywhere. But there's a game, Mario 64, Super Mario 64, I think is what it was. It was Mario for the Nintendo 64. It was the first Mario that was in 3D. You didn't just get to move left and right, you get to move all around. You're in a castle, you're trying to save Princess Peach, and who always seems to get captured. I don't know why she doesn't just go to a jujitsu class. You know what I mean? Like get your black belt, become a black belt, Peach. Learn to protect yourself. It's kind of getting ridiculous here. I'm sure that she's still getting captured in Mario games. I don't really play many video games anymore. I guarantee you she's been captured recently. And, she needs to get it together, to be honest. But anyway, um, is it Princess Peach? Is that who, isn't, are there two princesses? Regardless, still, you guys get the point. So the goal of the game was you were trying to save her. You have to fight Bowser 3 different times. And you only get to fight Bowser when you have a certain number of stars. You get each star by completing a mission. And so you had the door to where Bowser was. You could see the door, but you couldn't open it until you got to a certain level. And then once you got to that level, then you got to open the door, and then you got to fight Bowser. And I think about any belt in jiu-jitsu the exact same way. You don't think from the perspective, "Oh man, I'm going to get good. I'm just going to get my black belt. I'm just going to receive it." You take the necessary steps and you say, "What could I do to get to 80 stars? What could I do to become a black belt?" And so I think that that is one of the tougher things that people struggle with when they are doing jujitsu. It causes a lot of discouragement. And what tends to happen is people quit because their goal was, I want to get a black belt. I want to get a black belt. And then their goal wasn't to be a black belt, if that makes sense. And so a lot of times just changing our verbalization of things, changing the way we say things, the wording we use really will help us get to the point that we want to be. I think the first time I ever started to come into this mindset, I think it was from a book by Robert Kiyosaki. I believe it was the Cash Flow Quadrant. And if you think about just that statement, I was reading that book so I could become a better school owner. Uh, I owned a school for, I've owned the school for 6 years. I would say the first 3 years of it, I really didn't have a good grasp on what made a school owner. And I know that that sounds surprising, like, wait, but you were a school owner. Uh, I mean, I could play the part. I owned a school, yes, but I would not consider myself at those times a good school owner because I didn't understand how to run a business. I never ran a business before. And so it was very much forced me to learn on the job. And I think that that's something that happens to us sometimes when we get belts. Is sometimes we get belts, we get a black belt, and we say, hey, I don't think I deserve this. So then you focus on what you can do to become a black belt. And then also, I said on the title of this that I would answer what a black belt is, because I was just focusing there on becoming a black belt, right? So this is kind of my big opinion on what makes a black belt. And this is not coming from the competitor, Josh, that is saying like, okay, this is to compete at black belt, what you need. This is what I consider for my competitors, for my non-competitors, regardless. If somebody wants to get to black belt, this is the biggest lesson that I want them to have. What I need is I need you to start to uh, be a black belt at finding answers. This is why I like to ask my students questions a lot of times when they are doing, when they're asking a question, meaning like, why am I not getting this butterfly sweep? And I will look at it and say, well, what is he using to stop your butterfly sweep? I won't say just grab his arm. He's posting his arm, you idiot. And then that's it, because they don't get to learn, right? But if I say, how is he stopping it? And they'll say, well, he's posting his hand. And then I say, how could you prevent that? And they'll look at me and say, I could grab his arm. And that's their answer. When you teach people in that way, it allows them the opportunity to become problem solvers. So often in jujitsu, we just get all of our questions answered now because we can just go to YouTube and we can just have things easily answered for us. And I think that's good. I think it's good to be able to do that. It's something that I didn't get when I was earlier on in jujitsu. But I think it's not what our goal is to become a black belt. We don't want to just be a black belt because we've been on the mat long enough and we know we've memorized enough stuff. I was just on Chris Payne's podcast and we talked, it's called the Villain Cast, and we talked about what it's like when you see some people that have always just been fed, right? You just, it, it's the adage of you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. I know I said that backwards, but we just talked about that. We talked about how bad that can be for your students if you don't teach them how to learn on your own, because then they're always going to be dependent on you. I can't stand my students. I don't want them to be dependent on me. I don't want to have to deal with them. No, I really think for me, as guys get to purple belt, I expect them to have questions, rely on me when they need to, but I also expect them to be able to figure things out on their own. And because that's my biggest criteria of a black belt is can you figure it out yourself? You don't have to. You get a good team around you and you don't have to. And that's a really beautiful thing. I really love not having to uh, always have to answer every question myself. But I do like having the ability, and I think you need the ability to answer questions by yourself. And so that is my opinion on what is a black belt, somebody who can find answers. And we may find answers differently. I find a lot of my answers by having concepts that are true. I've talked about technique versus concept before. A technique is a specific move for a specific situation. A concept is a move or a thought that applies to multiple situations. And so we talk about, we talk about concepts in whatever episode that was. I need to memorize which episode was which. But if I have a concept, it makes it way easier to find the answer because I say, okay, this submission isn't working, and the concept of getting inside of their elbow knee space, like, man, if I wonder if I could get just a little closer to their armpit and their arm isn't so down and tight. Wonder if I could do that, if that would make this work better. And then I try it and it does. And so having a concept helps me answer questions. Some people do like to try to talk through like the question. So you ask your partner, "Hey, how does this feel? How does this feel?" And they give you feedback. And so that's a really good way to answer questions too. I think at first you do need to just get fed though. That makes sense, right? You need to just be uh, taught. I was actually talking with one of my students last night, and we were just kind of talking about where she is at on progression, and she's 3 months in, and I was explaining to her, okay, so you still have about 3 months left where you're still just figuring out how to learn and how your body mechanics work. And I call it like getting in touch with your body. Your first 6 months, that's what you're looking at. Eventually I'll do a podcast on breaking down what I think each person learns, kind of or should learn, or should be focused on from white all the way to black belt. Right now we're just really focused on black belt, and I'm just on a tangent. But we're just talking about that. Some people get to skip that. Some people have been coached their whole life and have played sports their whole life, and so they're so much in touch with their body that they get to skip that first 6 months. They just go in and they know how to learn, and they know which way their arms move and which way they, like, without thinking about it, which way they can plant their foot to make a move work, and they get to skip that. But at first, your first 6 months for most people, especially if you didn't play a lot of sports growing up, I think that that's all you're trying to learn. That's what it was for me. First 6 months, I'm just trying to learn how to learn. I would struggle with every move that we did. We would practice in class. When we start drilling it, I would try it, and I would have to have questions. I would have to have questions. I would struggle getting it. And then what would happen after I started to get to like 6 months? Then I would see a move, and I would be able to kind of drill it and kind of do it almost right. And there was still tweaks that needed to be made, but that's your first 6 months, and you focus on those when you're doing it. But then your next 6 months, then you're honestly, not your next 6 months, your next long time, you're focusing on trying to learn on your own. And I think that that is something people just skip in jiu-jitsu. They just say, well, I have a coach that has all the answers, so I'm just going to keep asking and keep asking and keep asking. And I think it's a pitfall. I think it's something that we should avoid when it comes to jiu-jitsu, because I think that that is one of the more important things that makes a black belt, is the ability to answer questions and the ability to find answers. It does not mean you have all the answers. You have the ability to find them. And the last little note that I will make, I've been referencing a lot of students throughout this whole episode because uh, honestly, because I just did a lot of belt promotions. And so that requires me to kind of take over like a month's time, kind of take note of who is doing what and what I think they should be working, and how they should be focused on their, on their jujitsu. And being able to rely on your teammates is also very important. Uh, I don't think you should overly rely on your teammates to where you don't have answers to your questions, but understand you don't have to do these things on your own. Specifically for me, this is probably surprising to a lot of people, but I run my gym. I only teach 3 adult classes a week. I have my dad, who's a black belt, who teaches 2, Justin Huff, who's a black belt, who's been on the show before, who teaches 1, and then one of my purple belts, Dylan, that teaches 1. And what that allows me to do, one, is focus on the business side, understanding business ownership and being able to run the gym like a business. Because whether people like it or not, the gym having money to back it will allow people to do so much more, will allow my students so many more opportunities that a lot of people never get, especially when it comes to transitioning into coaches and stuff. But that also allows me to be able to take a month and be teaching. I'll teach the few classes that I teach, but then on the other classes, all I have to do is sit back and watch each student individually, and I can make mental notes and say, this is what this person needs to be his next belt. This person needs to be her next belt. This person is right there. They just need a little bit of, they need something. They need a tweak. They need something to progress and to get there. And so by relying on my team that I have around me to teach, it allows me to be a better coach. And that's the same as a competitor. By relying on my teammates to push me, it allows me to be a better competitor. It doesn't have to just be all on me. And so those are kind of the 3 parts that I had written down for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I hope it is helpful for you. Be sure to listen to the next one with Eric Hubner. I think you guys, Hubner, I always mess up on his last name. I think I probably did it while we were doing the podcast too. It happens. But be sure to check out that episode. I think you guys will really enjoy it. And that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys have an excellent day. I hope that you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu.